Is there a place that I can follow the questions that are being asked as you guys are asking them?
Because they're going to be coming from a combination of Facebook and the chat,
Yeah, maybe not.
there would
Okay.
be, fortunately.
All right, everybody. We really appreciate you guys tuning in on a special edition Bad Publicity night here. We already got the chat blowing up in every ounce of social media when this got announced. I didn't mute my other stream here. My mistake. That killed that intro. So we're kicking off. This is season 5 of Bad Publicity. We're going to kick this off in style. No pun intended. Well, actually, only one person here has the style. Hollis dressed down for the occasion.
Yeah, it's not me, man. It's not me today. No.
Damon Stone, welcome to the show. Thank you very, very much for taking your time. I know we're way off the work hour clock here, so I hope they compensate you. You can come in late tomorrow or something.
Oh, if only. Tomorrow's a warehouse day.
Oh, man.
So let's start with that topic. There was a little feud going on at Worlds. Who was the best dressed man in Netrunner? And without even being biased, Hollis, I'm going to say you're losing your crown because Damon came every day.
Dude,
he didn't show up one time in a vest and stuff like that. He was on point every day. And then
I saw him one time. I saw him one time dressed down, and I think the only reason he did it is because he had to be a judge, and they made him wear like the official judge polo or whatever. But like after that, immediately after he was done, he was dressed in like a cardigan, and he had a bow tie on. I think he had so many articles of clothing, and it was like 80 degrees with 200 people inside. I was like, "What are you doing?"
Nah, it was called putting you to shame.
Oh, it was embarrassing. Never.
Hollis, cool is a state of mind, my friend.
Never again.
All right, well, Hollis, what's going on with you here, man? That was my Slack intro.
Not a whole lot, actually. I've been spending a good bit of time enjoying these fine FFG products. I'm not advertising or anything, but they're good products. Netrunner, Game of Thrones. Been doing a lot of drafting. And then, my typical work, chatting with you, Jameson, chatting with other members of the community, and just laughing it up every single day. What about you?
Yeah, we when we announced this a little bit ago, this has been in the works for a bit here, and we put it out on the social medias, and it was really hard to keep up with all the questions and all the interactions. People were, really dying to pick your brain here, Damon.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's good to be appreciated. We're just gonna pretend that it's all appreciation.
It is though.
So for people that aren't familiar with your line of history in the design space, do you want to just walk us through the Reader's Digest version of your background in game design here?
Sure. I was hired in 2010 to take over Game of Thrones First Edition, obviously. And during my interview process, I was asked, one of the questions that was asked was, what are some of your favorite games? And, I mentioned a small handful that I thought were very important to who I was as a gamer. One of them was Arkham Horror. It was the first co-op game I had ever played. I thought it was a phenomenal game, lots of fun to play, really sort of captured a lot of the feel of Lovecraft, but at the same time has sort of a 20s sort of pulpy feel to it. I also called out a Game of Thrones, obviously. It was the one that pulled me back in after I quit the whole CCG, the collecting madness. And I played Magic the Gathering, which I loved intensely, starting pretty much with the alpha set after the first release. And then moved on and played the original Netrunner and Vampire, The Eternal Struggle. And so the person who was interviewing me, who later ended up becoming my boss, was Michael Hurley, our VP of Product Development. And he says, well, it's funny that you should mention Netrunner. We just recently acquired the license for that. So, I know that I'm here to interview for a Game of Thrones, but if there's any chance that I can have something to do with you guys bringing Netrunner back, I want to be a part of that. He's like, yeah, I think that we could probably work something out with that. And after a few years of working on AGOT and Call of Cthulhu, and having worked with Netrunner pretty much from the beginning, mostly on development during the first box and part of the first cycle, and then moving into design from pretty much spin cycle on. I'm lead designer, so yay!
Congrats. Yeah.
It's like dreams do come true, right? That's the moral
They
of the
do.
story.
They really do. Boys and girls, wish upon a star.
Oh my gosh.
It's funny that every time somebody mentions Arkham Horror, it's like this sweet spot / soft spot for me. That the amount of money that I think I've poured into the Arkham franchise is just ridiculous. I've probably paid your paycheck many times over. Those minifigures, they just kept coming and coming and coming, and it was like a Pokemon thing. I just had to collect them all. For some reason, I think it was the only game that I officially pimped out to the extreme.
And I don't usually like very long board games. And when I first started playing Arkham Horror, I was actually stunned with how long the game was. But I enjoyed every single minute of it.
Yeah, story driven.
Except for whichever the character is that gets like a blessing in the beginning. We don't want to talk about that. Is she good now? Is she good now? I don't know.
Everything's fixed in the revamp.
That's a good question. I actually haven't had too much problem with any one specific character. I've definitely had problems with mixes of characters.
Yeah.
It's like you know what? It turns out we're all really smart. We all got, a lot of this, but we can't kick butt at all.
Nope.
Yeah, you're going down.
Yeah. And then your good old buddy Carl Sanford is always there.
Oh, yeah.
You better have $2. That's all I'm saying. You better have.
So before we get too far off track, Hollis, you had a Game of Thrones question that you'd like to ask too, right?
Yes. A friend of mine named Brian Holland showed me a card. He linked me a card that is in AGOT 1 called Damon Dance for me. And so, yes. Damon, we know a little bit about you. We know that you are like a professional dancer. That's why you're the modern Renaissance man. You're a jack of all trades and so many things. Does this card have anything to do with you? Did it come about because of you?
You know what? So that I designed the card, but I was the lead design for first edition for 5 years, but that's actually named after a character in the in George's books. So the interesting thing about that is I met George shortly after I took over AGOT, and we went out to dinner. And my the CEO, Christian T. Peterson, as we were leaving the restaurant after many bottles of wine and a lot of really great food was eaten and drunk, said, "Hey, did you know that Damon is a internationally renowned dance instructor?" And George turns and looks at me and says, "No, I didn't know that." And so we had about a 10-minute conversation about me dancing and the dances that I do. The next book that comes out has a character, Damon Dance, for me.
Wow.
I have tried to pin him down whether it had any relation to me at all, and he's not, George just really plays everything close to the vest, and he won't say.
Right.
Some people say, well, it has to be, and I'm of the opinion, I don't think it has to be. The most that maybe it had to do was, that's the sort of thing that sticks in the back of your brain, and he's like, I need a character. We've got several guys named Damon. Let's do another Damon. And it's like, but he needs something to distinguish him. And so dance for me. That'll be great. That's a super name. I love that name. That's what I think happened. I have other friends who insist otherwise, some of which know him as well. So I I don't know. He's not saying. At this point, it's been long enough that he may not even remember.
Hey, I think it's still a great story to pull out.
Yeah.
That's a dinner conversation story right there. And, as far as we're all concerned, it is now.
The card's based on you. I'm just going to assume it's based on you. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. Don't care. It's based on you.
So, have you ever done anything like that with your creative process? Have you ever gone into like your Rolodex of memories in the past, and then when you do your game state, like say like these Netrunners, the people or like little inside jokes and things pop up?
Definitely. So I was, as I mentioned, I was the lead designer for Call of Cthulhu, and there are a lot of my friends who have either died horrible deaths or have brought about various apocalyptic level events in the card form. And a number, actually, more and more friends of mine are appearing as shoutouts in Netrunner cards. Probably the most well-known is Cotty.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's a real person.
And
lives in Texas.
And then there's the official pronunciation for those people that had the feud going. So that's
yeah, because before so Damon said Katie, or not Damon, excuse me. Lucas said Katie. Damon says Cotty. I'm gonna just assume it changes with every designer that we'll get a different pronunciation.
Well, it's based off of a real person that I made. I named the card. It's Cotty. Lucas, however, will call it whatever he wants, depending on probably how he last heard it. Because I know I've heard him say Cotty around me, and I've heard him say Katie when talking to someone else who's saying Katie. You can pronounce it pretty much however you want. It's a fictional character.
Wow.
But if you say it in front of me, I'll probably correct you.
Cotty Jones. I got to get used to that now. Oh, man.
Is there any other... Can you touch on any other Easter eggs or something hidden in the Netrunner universe that maybe people haven't spotted yet that we can, unveil?
Haven't spotted. Oh. No. There are a number of things, but some of the ones that I think are most important, I'm playing close to the vest. There are things that may come out at some point. There's definitely, just when you said that, the first thing that popped into my mind was something from the Mombad cycle. So clearly I cannot, speak about that as of yet. Although I think the card is actually I know the card has been spoiled, but the in-universe stuff is going to have to wait for a little bit.
So we'll have the internet ablaze going through all the spoilers. Let the rumors commence, right? So you've pretty much had your toe in the Netrunner pool since the beginning, like you said.
Yep.
This isn't the first time that there's been a handoff to a new lead. Is there something different about this time? Is it hard to do that handoff process from one lead designer to another? Does it?
It can be. In this particular case, I don't think so. Lucas did the core set. He did all of the design for that. Most of the design for the Genesis cycle. As I said, I was involved with it, but it was just the development stuff, testing, acting as a sounding board. He was bouncing ideas off of me, but that's pretty much all him. But because we've been working together on this game for so long, I don't expect to have any hiccups. He's still just, down the row and around the corner at the office. So if I have a question, I see him every single day. He's like, hey, so this thing here that, you did, I noticed that there was a seed, planted. Where did you want to go with that? And try to honor some of the places that he had envisioned. But at the same time, he's been doing the same thing for me the entire time, which is I've created cards in the cycle, and he's asked like, oh, okay, so this thing, where did you want to go with that? So
is that
it should be a pretty smooth handoff, is what I'm trying to say.
Is that how you do your design when you look at a card game? Are you a mechanics first guy and then the theme gets painted on first, or do you come up with does someone shout out like a computer term or something like that you guys are like, we really need a card in there that does something to that theme? And
So you're asking about top down, designing from top down or bottom up, or in some cases like inside out. I do all three. I would say that if I had to put a strength for myself, it is pretty much the marriage of theme to mechanics. Okay. So if I come up with an idea that is mechanically based, like, oh, this is been shown to be a problem with our playtesters, so I want to put in a card effect that will help pull, one faction one way, or that will boost up or press down a particular, deck archetype or play style. And then I will work as hard as I can to theme it in a fashion that fits with what the card is supposed to be representing. Okay. And other times I do it the exact opposite. I'll come up with an idea. So the cycle after Mumbad is a great example where, I came up with an idea and sat down with the story team, and we just did a massive brainstorm session, and an entire narrative came out of that. And so that informed a lot of the cards thematically, and then it was a case of finding mechanisms that made sense with the story that I was trying to tell.
Do you feel what do you like better, or what tests yourself better as a designer? Do you like to work in more of a constraint environment? And what I mean by that is, along the sense of theme, you worked on Call of Cthulhu, and it pulls off the Lovecraft stuff. When you when you work on a Game of Thrones, you have George's stories already written, and everything's kind of laid out for you there, and you just take that theme and you incorporate mechanics into it and things like that. But Netrunner seems like it's this sandbox that you can just play in, and because this is totally 100% in-house built, you guys can go anywhere you want with it. So I mean, it's limitless where you can push this. Are you anxious to or excited to get into this design space like this, or would you rather have somebody say, like, challenge you to build within this realm here, like what you'd had to do with Game of Thrones?
Sure. Challenge is always good. Restriction breeds creativity. It's sort of a play on the idea of, necessity being the mother of invention. It's definitely a case where you want to constantly be spurred to move on, move forward, and having a framework that you have to create within causes you to take some really interesting twists and turns to try and find ways of expressing something that is in your mind. That said, a closed world like A Song of Ice and Fire is very, very much one that is a requirement to match George's vision. And there are times when I would want to, like, oh, it would be really cool to be able to explore this. But as of yet, that character is nothing more than a footnote in the very back of, the family tree of one of his novels. So I can't show this character. There's nothing there. And, there are times when we can talk to George and, like, hey, I was thinking about this. And George might go, actually, you know what? Don't, because this is something that's getting introduced in, a following novel, or go ahead, it's not something that is of overwhelming importance to the story itself. It's just a piece of the background history that I created. So having something that is such an open book like Netrunner, I can do almost anything. There's still rules. It's not my world. Android was created by Dan Clark and Kevin Wilson with Andrew Navarro, and between the three of them, they really crafted the fundamental structure of what that world is going to be like. It's just Lucas and I have above and beyond created probably 2-3 times as much information as previously existed for that universe. So we've got a lot of freedom, but there's still certain things like the phrase that gets used is, at the end of the day, you have to put your toys back in the box. So,
Okay.
I can't blow up the beanstalk.
Well, Damon, you said something that basically just sparked a question that we hear all the time. So, something you basically just said, I believe, was, restrictions a lot of times will breed creative choices. So, leading that into Netrunner, I know I imagine people have been hitting you with this particular question over and over. So, right now in Netrunner, we don't have any cards that are basically banned or restricted. Certain cards have much stronger power levels than others. And obviously, when you have certain cards that are very, very powerful, it leads people to kind of feel like they're sort of shoehorned into playing a particular kind of way. You come from games that have restricted and banned lists. So the easy question here for you is, can we expect to see restricted or banned cards that are going to be in Netrunner for competitive play?
If I'm going to be completely honest and completely blunt, absolutely.
Bam.
At some point, some card is bound to force a change.
Okay.
I can't make any specific statements about when or what, or even if it's a card that currently exists. It's just one of those sort of things like, you know what? Power level happens, the meta goes in one direction, and sometimes in order to pull it in a more healthy direction, it requires the changing of what the current environment is. And it's not something that we ever do lightly, but it's not something that I'm afraid of doing.
Nice. Alexander Hayden, just adding into some feedback from the chat. Alexander Hayden actually said he did not expect you to have that particular response. And I think the reason why a lot of the community feels that way is that I think Netrunner's done a very good job so far of sort of navigating without a ban list. I think enough card choices have been placed so that cards that maybe were problematic in the beginning of the cycle of the game have become a bit more manageable.
Yes.
And even though you said you couldn't answer as far as like whether it's future or present card pool, I imagine that there are cards looking at this year's Worlds that are a bit unexpected for their power level, maybe a little bit. But no,
really? Like what?
I don't know. Like, what's really good in the game? I think milling. Milling is really good in the game. It would be crazy. It would be nuts, actually, if I could mill and like really well and couldn't. Next topic. All right, so it'd be nuts, it'd be crazy.
Do you look at that kind of stuff, Damon? Does the meta and the community?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. I need to refresh my Foxfire browser. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was saying something.
Does the online community? Are you guys paying or not the online the community, like as in the forums and the meta and stuff like that, affect your design decisions?
I'd love to say no, but that would be a lie.
The real talk is here, guys.
Well, the honest truth is that most of the design that we do, the directions that we choose, the cards that come out, pushing and pulling and lifting and pressing down, comes a lot from our magnificent playtesters. So they're playing anywhere from 6 months to a year out. And I'll tell you now, I actually already have a group that's been playtesting in a post-rotation environment for over 6 months now.
Wow.
So a lot of the... I like to think ahead.
Nuts.
It really comes down to all the good stuff, I would say, all the wonderful balances and answers and stuff. they are responsible for a significant amount of that. We as designers are constantly looking at what can we do that will make something interesting, what will be something that will be really fun and crazy, and then our playtesters will try it, and then we've got some that are very reactionary, and it's like, oh my god, this completely changes everything, I hate it. And we have some who are totally revolutionary, and they're like, yes, excellent, I love all of this. And then we have the majority of everyone else, which sort of falls in between those two poles. And we try to listen to all of it and to chart a course that allows for people to feel comfortable and confident in their play, but not like they can just rest on a deck. That if you're not constantly developing your deck, and I don't mean adding new released cards, but adding new cards to your deck or changing the way that you're playing, I feel that there's something that we've been doing that is a little wrong. Either the card pool is not dynamic enough, or we have not made cards that are tempting enough to get you to try other things.
Yeah.
So I don't like errata. I hate banning. Restricted lists are a much finer surgical tool. What something like that would look like in Netrunner is anyone's guess. I've got like 5 different things in a whiteboard at work that say, like, here are different ways that we can solve this if we ever decide it's a thing that needs to happen. So I want to be clear that when I said, yes, it's going to happen, when I followed it with, but I don't know if it's a new card or an old card, it's because it isn't something that has been decided on as of yet. I have faith in the community will self-correct 9 times out of 10. And so we saw, DLR go crazy, this year.
Right.
I'd be very shocked if, regionals came around and DLR was the same kind of force that it was at Gen Con. I expect there to be a number of corp decks that are going to be able to give it a really rough time come store championships, because there are some amazing deck builders and players out there, and what they're doing right now is taking Dan's deck and ripping it apart and figuring exactly where its weak points are, and then are making corp decks that are going to be able to handle it.
Do you feel
get
like
enough
there's
victories underneath their belt, and that will hopefully be embraced by the community, and it'll get suppressed a little bit.
Do you feel like there's enough of those good deck builders out there in the wild right now, or do you feel that the Netrunner community as a whole is still pigeonholed into thinking one way, right? Like overemphasizing a certain mechanic.
That's those two things are not mutually exclusive. We can have a lot of incredibly innovative thinkers out there, people who are building decks, and it may be like, hey, here's a deck, and all I've done is change 4 or 5 cards. But the 4 or 5 cards that have been changed may be the perfect thing to take it up to another level, or to allow it to go in a completely different direction and handle where the meta is currently at. Things that, nobody would have thought about including in their deck prior to, that deck showing up. So I think it's just a case of the overall competitive community probably being a little bit more open about things that are showing up in places. Like, I know that there were some decks that defied the conventional wisdom about this faction is no good or this identity is no good, and won some store championships and won a regionals or a nationals or 2.
Yeah.
But I have definitely been made aware of the fact that some of those decks and some of those players have been, dismissed. Like, oh, well, how many people were at that regional? Well, it was a national event, so there were like 100 and some odd people. Oh, but there's no good people in that country. It's like that. Statistically speaking, that's unlikely.
Yeah.
Especially considering how the Europeans did so well, this year at Worlds.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Jesse Vandover actually made a really good statement. I want to say it was at Gen Con last year. I think a fair amount of the competitive community sort of acknowledges decks that are kind of, you have the proof is in the tournament results, right? So you see this deck win often, and so you look at that and you go, well, obviously, if XYZ deck that didn't win is supposed to be good, why is it not winning a tournament? But there's so many elements that are involved. I mean, sometimes, I mean, a good even with skill involved, part of winning a high level tournament, you need a little bit of variance to go in your favor. And
Definitely.
and one thing that Jesse said that, I mean, it's been pretty clear when you look at some people that have made certain top eights at different nationals and regionals and worlds. There is enough wiggle room with the card pool to where everybody's playing these consistent yet predictable decks that any guy that shakes it up can do so much better, because it's just not a deck archetype or a collection of cards that you're used to playing against. So now you're adapting on the fly. You don't have enough practice. That could be all it takes. Me knowing my deck 100 times versus you knowing it 5 is it's probably going to be very much in my favor with a few different card slots. And again, that's still not the end all be all, but there is room there for weird things to make a splash.
Yeah.
So,
I think that there is a fundamental misunderstanding about how a game like Netrunner worked in the original form and the changes that were made in Android Netrunner. The original Netrunner, when you built a deck, you built it very similarly to the early days of Magic, which is you got all the most powerful cards you could, and you put them in as many times as you were able to, and then you tweaked, for variance. It's the whole min-maxing idea.
right.
But, if that were valid in and of itself, then you would take a look at champion decks, and they would be 3 copies of every card to make up that 45 card or 49 card deck. But that's not what you see. You see 1-ofs and 2-ofs. And it is understood, I think, on a upfront level that, oh yeah, I really want to get this card, but I don't want it in my opening hand. I want it more in the mid game, so I'll put 2 of them, or I want it in the late game, so I'll put 1 of them, and it decreases that variance. But they forget that they need to apply that to the other side, which is, well, here is a card that is situational. Maybe 4 out of 7 games, it's just going to be a dead draw. But if I include it as a 1-of, I'm much more likely to get it later, but I can also always try to overdraw to find it or search for it. And having it in my deck allows me that ability to answer that situation when it happens. There was a while there where everybody was downplaying the Cybernetics stuff. It's like, oh, that's just a bad card. If you ever run across viruses to the point where you need to do something about it, then you should just, clear, virus tokens. It's like, sure, but if the thing that your deck is really weak against is, great giant R&D digs by way of medium, or your ice is getting torn apart by parasites and data sucker, then having a couple of those in there is really great. If someone is going to be trying to do multiple runs against archives, for instance, to build up those sucker tokens, there are things that you can do to make them pay for that. And, when Noise Shop was running all over the place, people were still adhering to this thought that these cards that get rid of viruses in a more efficient way than losing your whole turn were inefficient. And, it's like just adding 1 of those and knowing that it's in your deck and being able to draw into it when you really need it can make a huge change. And if you run the numbers, the hypergeometric distribution, you will notice that making this 1 change, adding this 1 card, means that I'll draw this other 1 card 0.005% less than I would have. And that's over, I don't know, 600-700 games. They take a look at this idea of variance as if it was, you could only see it from one side. It's like, it will work this way. I have most of my stuff that I can have in a deck, and that's going to get me all of these numbers. It's like, well, right, but I can flip a coin, 10 times in a row, and it can land on heads every single time. It's only over like 100 tosses of that coin do you start seeing the bell curve of, oh yeah, it's actually hitting like 50-50. So I think there's still a lot of examination that can be done in the deck building. The sweet science of subtlety, that idea of putting in a couple of extra cards that are just a little bit different than the thing that you net decked can improve its skill as meta calls. It allows you to play potentially in a way that was unexpected, because like, oh, okay, you're playing Cambridge, great. Oh, wait, you're playing Cambridge with a card that I've never seen in that deck list before, and I don't know how to handle it. I'm now second guessing. Maybe you're not really running Cambridge. Maybe I need to attack in a different way. Yeah. Same thing with red codes, prepaid case.
True.
I mean, there are a number of little changes that you can make that can just throw your opponent off in a pretty strong way that are excellent meta choices.
Nice.
I was really surprised that Hollis didn't go off screaming when you said net deck in there. That's his buzzword of the month.
No. I will again, I feel like, we want to ask you a ton of questions, and actually in a moment I'm going to actually hit up the chat and tell them, you guys, throw me all your questions, so Damon, you better be ready. But I would like, speaking on, like, I like having the discussion with you, Damon, primarily because to us, you're you are the inside man to us. So granted, you're speaking for yourself, but, similarly to Lucas, right? Lucas was very much a kind of go-to person for a lot of the questions we had in the community regarding like card rulings, motivations behind certain cards. And I mean, he was pretty active on Twitter as well with that kind of stuff. So my question is, are we going to get that same kind of interaction with you, I guess, on the fly? Like, if I send you a Twitter message right now, say, hey, Damon, please tell me how X card and Y card work together, which one has priority. Are we going to expect the same kind of responses from you, or will it take more time?
Here's my response for anything that is asking about new rules. How does this card work? I'm going to just, stick you on and tag Jacob and let him handle it.
Nice.
Okay.
If it's a case of card clarification, like these are established rules and you're just wondering how it applies in this particular circumstance, and I happen to have my phone on me and I happen to notice that I've gotten a tweet, I might do it. But anything that I say outside of the official rules channels, which is submitting a question by the rules link on our website or by our FAQs and tourney rules, it's not official. I don't have the cards directly in front of me. I don't have a rule book. I don't have the run, diagram. There's a lot of things that I could simply be misremembering. I can't tell you how many times players will ask a question and they will try and quote the card text and they'll get some fundamental aspect of the card text wrong. And that completely changes the ruling. I have in tournaments been asked to come over and then adjudicate, and I'm like, okay, so tell me what happened, and they'll start somewhere in the middle and I'll give them the answer based on what they told me, and then someone has come up to me afterwards and go, but I thought that, and then they go from the very beginning of the situation. Oh, well, I mean, clearly this is the answer, but when I asked you to tell me what was going on, this is what you said. So the ruling I gave you is only relevant in that specific context. So I probably won't be nearly as responsive as Lucas was. But then again, if you checked out some of the, internet flame wars that have resulted by offhand comments that Lucas has made in those same tweets, you'll understand why I will defer more to the chance to study the question and confer with my notes and rule books and the cards themselves.
Right. I think the community very much, though they appreciate the fast response, it may not be such a bad idea to table the question until it's a 100% answer by the staff, and then at least you have an official, this is the way it works, we've talked about it, we've discussed it, and from now on, there should not be a question, there's no flip-flop.
Yeah. Well, I don't like the term flip-flop.
We hope.
Yeah. Well, mostly it comes down to there are times when we reverse rulings. After further study and seeing how it impacts future card design, sometimes we will reverse a ruling that we have made because it is in the long-term health interest of the game the better choice, even if it was actually factually not the proper answer at the time. So it's a living card game. It's not just that we put out new cards and you guys make new decks, but the rules, I believe, should grow and change as is necessary to keep the health of the game alive. I mean, this is a game I love to play as well as design, so I don't want it going anywhere. So if something needs to change to keep it healthy, then I'll do that. But it won't be willy-nilly. It won't be just, I don't like that anymore. It will have been based on a fair amount of discussion and a fair amount of consideration.
Damon, is there a mechanic in the game you feel is being underutilized or ignored?
Cross my fingers. Cross my fingers on this one. Cross my fingers on this one.
Why are you waiting for more?
What do you think is being underutilized?
Hollis wants to see more Psy games everywhere.
No, oh God, no, please don't put that on me, man. Do not put that on me. I didn't say that.
I'm going record now. I love the Psy game.
Oh man, why would you
say? I love the Psy game. It may have something to do with my background in psychology. So,
oh man.
Yeah, I was a counselor when I was living in California before I moved to Minnesota.
So is that a hint at maybe some...
getting into people's heads is something I really enjoy.
Oh gosh. I don't know if I can take. We'll see. We need to see what it does.
I didn't say that there was going to be more of it. I just said I enjoyed it.
I was like, oh my goodness, it's not that bad though.
But there's going to be more of it. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
But it's aliens. Okay.
So is there an area that you feel needs to be strengthened then, like, or underutilized, like people are ignoring, or is there something that you guys like made or a card you put out and you're like, why has nobody played this answer yet?
There are definitely cards that I look at and I'm like, why you love this card? But for the most part, I think that the community has discovered all of the major mechanics. I think that some of them have been set aside without looking back, and I think that is always a mistake. I think it's important, at the end of every cycle, every 6 months, you need to just go through your entire card collection and really give a long, hard think at things. It's I guess the easiest way to talk about it is from like a DJ perspective. You have a lot of music that you own. You only play a fraction of it. And when you first heard a thing, your tastes were different than they are now. So you give your old records, your old CDs, your old albums a listen, and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't notice how good this song is. And sometimes you'll do that and you'll take a look at the songs that you really like, and you're like, oh, this song is totally played out. I can't believe, checking my logs, I played this song like every other week for the last year. I'm done. I'm done with this song. No more. Throwback nights only. And so there are definitely cards that people have in their decks that they are, relying on, and there's no need to do so anymore. The community and the players have outgrown those cards. But they're still showing up because they are the good cards.
Okay. Well,
is there cards straight up that we might never see an answer to then, or
that you might never see an answer to,
or a use for, like are we going to see competitive decks with Monolith? Like where does the finger point for that one?
Monolith falls into a category of cards that was probably just a little too good, a little too efficient in its last form, and so it got nerfed just a little too hard. Monolith started off as an amazing card, like just absolutely amazing. The amount of click efficiency in that card was unholy, and the playtesters had like a mini rebellion about how good it was. And then, they played it and complained and played it and complained and played it and complained, and rightly so. And eventually it was a case of like, okay, this card is skewing things. Let's just do this. It will be safe this way. And that is generally my, and Lucas for the most part, choice on how we handle these sorts of things, which is it could go, we think that it's probably fine now, but if we make it cost one more, or we make the reduction one less, or we do one less program or whatever, it will make it safer. And if it's too weak, well, we can always do something that boosts it in some fashion, or put out another one that does a similar kind of thing, but in a better fashion. Later.
Would that be the same for when cards get cycled out? Like, are you guys planning to re-implement some of these quote unquote crutches that people have leaned on, that they're like, when this gets cycled out, we definitely need it. When Jackson gets cycled, they're gonna have to reprint Jackson officially, and rather than put a twist on him.
Yeah. So actually, we had asked earlier about like shout outs and Easter eggs and stuff like that. Jackson Howard is actually named and designed after my nephew.
Oh, wow.
So he's not going anywhere. The card, however, is a different story entirely. The card's rotating. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That card is going to go away. If you have not learned how to play without a Jackson Howard in your deck, and by A, I mean 3, now's a good time to start learning. That is not to say that those effects won't, reappear on another card or on multiple cards.
Yes.
But if Jackson Howard as a character shows back up, he will almost certainly have a different effect. As of right now, I have no plans on reprinting cards that have rotated in regular data packs. That I think is just not fair to people who have bought everything and are now buying a new data pack, and suddenly instead of 20 new cards, they get 19 new cards and one card that they already have 6 of. So
yeah, because we see a lot of online comments too about people saying we need a core set 2.0 that's all cleaned up with these are the cards that you officially need going forward, right? But I wouldn't think that's fair to people at the start.
Well,
anybody who thinks that and has cards that they think that are absolutely necessary to continue going on, and a list of cards that they want to see excluded from the core set, because that's the only way such a thing would ever happen, they should feel free to text or send an email to Lucas Litzinger.
Oh, that's right. Honestly, I hadn't even considered the fact that, because he created the core, we basically would be telling him, hey, sorry, remember all this work you've done? Yeah. We don't care. Just take it out. Thanks. You've done your job. But
the game changes. The game matures. The players change. The players mature. So, the concept of a 2.0 core set is, I can understand where it comes from. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, and I'm not even saying that it will or won't happen. It's just one of those sort of things that it's a conversation that it's a conversation that does not really involve me in the decision-making process.
Right.
That's the, the powers that be. That's a sort of thing that they will make a decision on.
How does your decision come into play and what's included in a big box? Like, how do you guys decide those identities? Because those identities and big box cards have been said that those ones are not going to be cycled out. So is there a lot more thought put into what cards are put into a bigger box expansion?
Generally speaking, the idea of putting just cards in cycles, knowing that they rotate out, gives us a little bit more freedom to try things that are a little bit wacky. When we know it's something that is not going to be rotating out, an evergreen card, we really want to try, especially for something as defining as an identity, we really want to try and make it so that it'll always be useful, that it's always a choice that someone could turn to. Now, whether someone chooses to do so or not is another matter entirely.
Is there any secret tips for an ID that's been ignored that you want to point people towards? Tell people, you know what, maybe you should go back and really, grind the gears with said ID.
Here's the thing, and this is where the internet's going to blow up at me. I've actually seen 3 Professor decks that are pretty fierce. So
interesting.
There are competitive builds with the Professor. Whether or not
that's including Rebirth.
Something that would. I'm sorry, what was that?
I said whether or not that's including Rebirth right now or not.
I will say this: it was before Rebirth was a thing. So whether or not it is capable to be done with where the metagame is right now, that's a different question, right? A competitive deck versus something that would be tier 1, and to me tier 1 is a constant shifting set of competitive decks based on where the metagame is a different thing. But I think a lot of people just dismissed the Professor entirely because he's not easy to build. He requires a lot of thought. But then again, people thought Jinteki and NBN were terrible.
That is true. For a little while, before NBN got that other 3-2, why play it? And before Jinteki had the support from their big box and Sundu, it was very difficult to pilot either of those primary 2 IDs you see often. And I think even what is it, Biotech, Life Imagined, that is such a great ID and it's undervalued. It's so great. I just got destroyed recently by a Val deck running, I was running a Val deck and they were playing Jinteki Biotech and they used the tank and wrecked me. Like, I've never seen anybody use the tank, but of course it was an available option they had for that build, and it was enough. It did the job. I was ready to deck him, and he was like, "No, sorry, plan failed," and they were able to rush out. Well, they were in the process.
I mean, that's a mechanic there that's so well formed for Jinteki, right? Like, what ID is under that, or what ability is under on the backside of that ID, right? Just
mind games.
Yeah.
Yep. So, Damon, I have a question from chat.
Okay.
Alrighty. So I'm going to try to... It was actually like 3 questions. We're going to combine them in one.
Okay.
So we've got some really, really powerful cards, but beyond just powerful cards, we have very powerful IDs that seem to have a problem being dethroned. And those IDs, to me, are pretty much Kate in Shaper and Engineering the Future and other IDs like Near Earth Hub. Now, I know that the style of the deck you play really sort of makes one of the ID better or worse, but in the case of IDs like Kate and HB, they're so powerful, they're so universally good that it's really hard to justify in most any archetype running a different ID. So are we going to see? I mean, it's sort of.
Let me put it this way: I disagree.
Okay. Well, my question will be then: are we going to see? As far as like economic power level, are we going to see any IDs in the future? Nothing specific. Can we expect an ID that will dethrone Kate as the primary Shaper or dethrone HB as the primary HB? because they're
You're
very,
asking me
very
to
good.
Predict the future.
You got it. You have it right here. It's all in this area right here.
Well, let me put it this way. Kate is not my favorite shaper.
What's your favorite?
I can't tell you.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I really can't tell you. The thing is that this isn't a prediction about what is coming down for the game. This is a prediction about where is the meta going to go.
Right.
Because I can talk about, this is very clearly a better card, a better choice, a better thing. But if no one goes and figures out how to make it work, then, what's the point? I mean, how's that going to be a thing?
Okay.
So, yes, I would say that there are cards that, from a efficiency level, are the equal of those in their factions. Whether or not they have or will be embraced by the community is, anyone's guess.
Are you allowed to say if you lean towards the Shaper faction, are you a Shaper player?
Oh, I can tell you. I can absolutely tell you. I don't really have a favorite faction for runners. I prefer individual runner identities over faction.
And then for corporation?
I would say that I still have mad love for Jinteki, but it's become so popular lately. This is about the only place that I'm a hipster. It's like, oh my god, I was down with Jinteki way before, I was down with Jinteki before Timmy even knew what a click was. But, the reality is I'm playing a lot of Haas right now. I am loving the Cybernetics division.
Good call on that.
Cool.
Speaking of runner IDs and stuff like that, Data and Destiny introduced 3 factionless runners.
Yes.
Are you able to talk and we get your take on those? So, because Lucas had mentioned to us that this next cycle will not have or will not produce any direct support for these factionless runners. That means that he's basically passed the ball over to you for cycles going forward to put some love into these guys.
Do you want to need it?
Well, probably not right now. I mean, there's still a lot to explore with them. You guys have given us a big design space to look at, but I'm just wondering your take and if this is something that going forward we can see like another Atom card pop up or some support for Apocalypse or Apex. Sorry,
my dog. I will go so far as to say this. We specifically have not ruled out the idea that they will get cards in the future. Whether they actually will or not, can't say. But it is entirely possible to support them and their decks and deck style of play without having to give them new cards. A neutral card that does a thing that makes Apex, better in this way or that way, or a neutral card that, really advantages Atom or Sunny. Those are all, awesome things. Basically, any new cloud breaker that comes out is just an opportunity for Sunny to get better.
Got it.
What you probably can't pick up on the microphone is my fiance is just like, Sunny, she just finished making a new Sunny deck.
I guess we also can't rule out, seeing maybe another neutral runner added in.
Well,
or sorry, not factionless runner. I want to make sure I use the proper.
I wouldn't even call them factionless. They are mini factions.
Mini factions.
They each have their own unique symbol. So yes, and you're right. We have not ruled out we have not ruled out that we will never do another one again, just because they are not in a. There are no more faction boxes that would be paired up with another corporation in a fashion that would force this sort of thing to happen. that's not to say that it won't happen. Of course, that's not to say that a new faction box won't come out and it'll be all mini factions, or I don't know. We'll see.
So the
it's
last
an interesting, brave new world we're in.
The last canned question that I have before we turn it over to Hollis and his gang of minions in the chat here. I think people would really like your take on the Big W.
Yeah, that's a big one, man. That's a big one. You have to.
Can you clear the air on maybe like how you feel Weyland is at the moment, where Weyland could be going?
Unloved. I had a wonderful German fellow bend my ear for about 15 minutes straight about his
Marcellus.
love for Weyland. That would be the man.
I know. Yeah.
No, I know you do. And yeah, so Marcellus was talking all about Weyland, and about how great it is and how fierce his deck is. And we were talking for a fair amount of time, and I would say that most of what he said was correct. I think that much like Criminal had been thrown under the bus as, just dismissed as like, oh my God, like, Andromeda's not winning the way that she used to, so and she was the best identity in Criminal, and therefore Criminal is dead. What's the line? Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years.
Yep.
Weyland hasn't gone anywhere. Weyland has still got a fair amount of things that it can do. And actually, I think that there is right now, I think the metagame is really ripe for a Weyland takeover. I think there are a couple of deck builds that can be made that would take some massive advantage of what is being seen out of Prepaid Kate and out of Val DLR.
So you don't feel like you have to strap on this cape and save this faction?
I am Jack Weyland. No, I don't. I don't think that I do. But I talked about before where one way of a design failure is not being able to tempt players to try things. And I think that's where Lucas and I have missed the boat a little bit. I think that there are some really great things that can be done with Weyland, and we haven't given anything splashy enough to make people reconsider it and then take a look at what's out there. I think a lot of people are just saying, oh yeah, it's more of the same, and not seeing some of the subtle variations and the important differences. And then sometimes more of the same is exactly what is needed to make a thing actually, workable. So I would say that Weyland has love coming. I think the metagame, if the player base takes a long, hard look at Weyland, there are a few people who I know of, and which means there's got to be dozens more, who can create a fair amount of havoc with a couple of really good sound Weyland decks. But, Weyland will get some cool stuff. I like Weyland. I like Weyland quite a bit. So they will see love.
I have no inside information, but I am fully expecting that 3-2 and that new code gate that is a wormhole, Damon. Just letting you know, I'm expecting both these things. I hope I get them. No.
We'll see.
All right, Hollis, what do you got on your side there?
Okay, I'm going to skip around a bit just because some of these questions I want to hear an answer to more than others. No offense to anyone in chat, but it is the way it is. So
it's what happens when it's your show, right?
Hey,
that's the way it works.
Do what I want. I don't care about your opinion. All right, so controversial questions. I like those. What sources, if you see, I don't want to ask you that, but I'm going to do it.
Just do it.
What sources do you and your team watch? And this is from Matastrophic. What sources do you and your team watch in order to get a sense of the metagame? Is it only internal? Do you use outside sources that aren't official? You don't have to say them.
And feel free to drop Bad Publicity in there.
Yeah, hey.
Remember the check hasn't cleared yet for the appearance, right?
I'm sorry, what? Bad what?
Got him. He got us.
So actually, there's a lot of different things that we look at. But rather than going out and plugging, my personal favorites like Bad Publicity or
that's a sound drop
or Terminal 7 or Team Covenant or, SimHack forums, or before, leaving all that aside. I actually have people in a lot of different metas all over the country and a couple of international ones who actually just regularly report to me what is going on. We had a game night kit tournament, and here are the decks, here was the placements, this is how many people showed up. So, this is a thing that it gets reported directly to me that I'm using.
Okay, so when there's a tournament, then I always wondered that. I know that you guys collect that data over like what was played in the tournament and like what won. I always wondered if like that ever trickles down to the staff and you guys. Sorry, I have a whole different question now, but continue.
For something like Gen Con and Worlds, I actually have those deck lists in a folder on my desk. Like I have the Icebreaker deck lists, sitting on my desk, as well as the championship ones from Worlds. So, our premier events, absolutely. I get those, I look through those. Lucas was getting them, he looked through them, and we have who was playing what, where they placed. But I'm talking about you have a store, in Berkeley, California. You have a store in, Pasadena. You have a store in Vegas. And there are, a game night kit, tournament. So you're going to get like 16 people to show up because they're looking for like play mats and a couple of promos. And I've got somebody in there who's like, hey, D, this is what, was played at this thing. And I'll talk to you again in a month when we do our next one.
Okay.
So it's not even stuff from our events. Like, that's how small I, break it down. Not to mention the fact that I actually have a lot of friends who just play this game, and they're scattered all over the world. And so I'm constantly getting things from them like, oh my God, I just, rolled 5 games in a row, using this deck, using my Haley, my Haley deck. It's like, that's great. That's super. Let me see your deck list. So.
Well then, oh man, I love this question. All right, so my next question would be, I think before we've asked Lucas, like, are you guys ever really surprised by the deck list people come up with? Now I'm assuming not. I'm assuming most of the time, pretty much everything, or most things are caught before they actually make it to us. So, looking at like tournament winning deck lists with your, I'm gonna call it like tournament result elves that you have out in Netrunner world. Do you guys ever get the tournament winning deck lists and then you guys among yourselves go, we got to build this deck, we got to play it, and we got to know if it's legit or is it just like whatever, this is a whatever deck, we've seen this before? Like, has that ever happened?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've definitely there is someone who used to intern for us, Kat Shen, and she just sent me a icebreakerless apocalypse deck using Apex, and I'm just looking at this thing. I'm like, I have to build this. I have to see how this monstrosity works. It's awesome. It is really cool. Nice. I make no claims about like, oh yeah, this is totally going to be the thing that takes Apex to the top, and he's in a top 16 with a deck like this. No breakers, breakers are for beginners. Nothing like that. But it's a deck that shows amazing creativity, and it works.
Interesting.
And
and I think I know.
So like this is the kind of thing that I call a proof of concept deck. Mm-hmm. So you build a thing and you go off the deep end with it. And what you're looking for is not to win. It's to try and understand how the cards work together. Understand how people are going to respond when they are faced off against something that might be unexpected, and potentially force you to reevaluate things that you are adding into your decks. It is, in that way, similar to the innovative thoughts that come out of playing a draft deck. Like, oh my God, I had to use, this card, this icebreaker that I never use, and I just realized that this thing totally breaks this one piece of ice really efficiently, and that one piece of ice is seeing play all over the place. So that's the kind of thing that might show up, you know, in a draft, and you're like, oh my god, that's brilliant. And now maybe it's just a one of in your deck, and you go and you use your special orders or whatever to, you know, search it out when you want to blow something up. But yeah, so there are definitely decks that we get that I'm going, okay, that's innovative, that's cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll see something that's like, wow, that is really similar to a deck that I built when we were testing this. But you know, change these 4 or 5 cards, and it gives it a completely different, you know, flavor to it. You know, I want to try this one out and see how it's going to go.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, to Netrunner fans out there, what that means is if you're out there making an original deck list and you're doing well with it, chances are very good that FFG knows about it already. Yeah, and they may have even sleeved up your exact list. They net decked you.
That is going to end up on Damon's desk, is what
they
what
net
we're
decked
saying.
you guys.
That's it. I did it. I think it's really important for us because we're not allowed to play, obviously, in our tournaments.
Right.
And so the only real way that we can get a real good sense for some of these decks and their strengths is to build them ourselves. It's actually a pretty common thing when someone is complaining about a deck, and it's not just for Netrunner. I do this with all the games that I've designed for. Somebody's complaining about a deck, and I'm like, okay, well, let me build it, let me play it, I understand it, now let me build a deck against it. How does that deck do?
Yeah.
You know, and now that deck, can I play it off against, you know, whatever the other top 3 or 4 decks are? And if it does decent against those, and it's, you know, it holds its own, or even, you know, heaven forbid, smashes the deck that people are complaining about, then I'm like, you know, my job is done here. You know, there's no need for erratas, no need for restrictions, no need for banning, and, you know, frankly, no need to introduce more cards that are silver bullets or, you know, blunt bats, because, you know, there are ways of playing around it or ways of building around it of things that already exist in the card pool.
Yeah, I mean, someone actually asked that. That was on my list here. So silver bullets, just to touch on that, do you like them? You dislike them? Do you feel like they hurt or help the game for the most part when you have silver bullets like that?
These are the cards that I call meta calls.
Yeah.
So, you know, Magic the Gathering started it with their tournament play with the idea of sideboarding, and a lot of games have gone in that direction. And there's, you know, legitimate reasons why you would do that, both as a somebody who works for organized play for a game, and why players would want to think. I'm always of the opinion that your deck should include the answers that it needs, and that if it can't, then you have really 2 options. You know, it's like, I'm going to make a deck that's all about toolboxing. It's got all the things that I need to be able to do to stop everything that's going to hurt me, and I am now just going to fulfill my win condition, because nothing that you throw at me is going to be something that I don't have an answer to. Like, you don't see those kinds of decks in games that have sideboarding. You know, the sideboard is the toolbox. So they'll have, you know, this one main avenue of attack, and maybe they'll have a secondary kill condition, but usually it's just this one main thing, and it's totally able to be, like, just stopped dead if somebody has the right cards. So then you're swapping some of your cards out to swap new cards in that are the answers to their answers for your deck, and, you know, it becomes a push and a pull. It becomes a meta game in a microcosm. I believe that a deck should either just do what it does so well that no matter what answers your opponent has, you're just going to blast right through them. You can put up more attacks than their ability to defend. And therefore, you just burn through all of their answers. Or you go big or go home.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, it's a glass cannon. I tried, you have the answer, and I'm done. So, you know, I think that is a credible choice that each player needs to consider. So I think there should always be answer cards. I think that they should answer more than one problem, but there should always be answer cards. So,
Okay.
Say there's we'll talk about like, oh my God, I'm getting milled to death. It's like, okay, well, I could add a card that will prevent this, and it's really great and smashes DLR. Okay, awesome. But if you're not facing a bunch of DLR decks, that's probably not the best choice, unless DLR specifically is the only thing that your deck is really weak against. In which case, why go for, a less efficient form that is more general? Like, if DLR is what I'm afraid of, then I'm going to handle DLR. I don't worry about anything else. If it's just being decked in general, it's like, then I want an answer that can also help me fight off against, noise and, just virus decking. So, silver bullets have a place.
Right.
But I don't think they are the sole answer. If I'm releasing a silver bullet, it's usually because there are just general deck choices or play decisions that you can make that will get you out of most of the problems that are there. And if you're unwilling to change your deck and you're unwilling to change your play style, you only have one choice left, and that's to put the silver bullet in. So those are the three choices you have. You have to choose one of them.
Sorry, I'm just giving a bravo. It's a bravo. So, one more question, or not one more, but another question unrelated. Someone asked in the chat, I wish, I'm sorry I don't have your name in front of me. They asked about something like more of like a European world. So I know, Damon, this really isn't a judgment call you get to make in this sort of deal. I know there's a lot of things that are involved that make things like this happen. You guys have your own worlds already at your store that you guys have built. This makes sense, and you offer to fly people from all across the world to worlds. So my question is, or I guess his question was, is there anything you can tell us about additional tournaments that are being worked in different countries to sort of accommodate people that are more local to that country? I know previously
other than the store championships, regionals, and nationals that they have in every country?
Yeah, in this case, it's more of basically. I guess the short of it is,
Damon, can every country have their own worlds tournament?
Can they, Damon? Can Europe have their own worlds? Give them a chance, Damon. Give them a chance.
Last I checked, we all lived on Earth, which would be one world. So I am not in charge of OP. That's Zach. Zach is OP's manager. He is the person who can answer that. Although I would say that the concept of multiple world champion events happening in multiple countries would require a different name, because you have one world champion because we are one world. But as far as high-level premier events and other things, I think it's an excellent idea. I would love to see it. But I'm a design monkey. None of this is my choice. Sometimes somebody from OP comes over and asks my opinion on a thing, and then I talk at them. But I literally have no say in that side of it.
Well, I don't know if this question's going to make any sense, but it really stuck out to me as a fun one to ask. They says,
Sure.
Damon,
I like fun.
what's the best time that someone's personally exploratory romped you from the So Strong crew?
Oh.
Aaron.
That was from Aaron Brown.
Yes. So the worst exploratory romping that I've ever had was during the Plugged In tour. I want to say it was in Los Angeles, but it might have been Pasadena. Actually, I think it was Pasadena, and I'm pretty sure I was playing Jinteki. I was definitely playing the Jinteki deck at the time, which had a crazy 75-80% win ratio. You should see this deck. It's beautiful. All of these cards have so many signatures from bounties that I had collected. and there is a young lady who is not part of the tournament but has come for the for the event and wants to play. And I say, I would love to play you. So we sit down and we start playing, and I think she's actually playing a Chaos Theory deck too. And I have set up just the most ridiculously lethal set of cards possible. I mean, there is just death here and there, and everything is being disguised. So it's like, I'm going to install Advance. She doesn't run. I install Advance. She doesn't run.
Wow.
I grab some credits. She doesn't run. I mean, she's running on like my hand, or she's running on R&D, and she's building her rig. And eventually we get to the point where I've got, I think, 4 cards all advanced with between 1 and 3 tokens on them. And then she just proceeds to dismantle them left and right with exploratory romps. And people are watching this because the tournament is like over now. And they're like, wait, why are you using that card? That card is so bad. And I'm just watching her just take the piss out of all of my work. It's just all of my, things. Because it was essentially, a series of trick of light batteries. I was just going to start scoring crap right out of hand, and she's just defusing all these traps that had just been made completely lethal. Like, she could not have run on them otherwise. And I'm just watching the game slip through my fingers. It was the hardest match I had had as Jinteki the entire tour.
Guys, today we learned Exploratory Romp, OP, 3x all decks. Needs to be 3x, include all decks. If you don't have it, you're bad. Just saying.
No. Well, I mean, it really just comes down to the fact that I knew that nobody liked the card and nobody played the card, so that allowed me to play in a fashion that, took advantage of that. Except for her. She played the card, and it just totally wrecked what I was doing. Totally wrecked what I was doing.
And
so there you go, Aaron Brown.
Congrats. Aaron Brown, thank you for allowing us to be regaled by that story. It's actually beautiful. I'm now putting 3x Exploratory Romp in my deck right now. I have to correct a question. I made a boo-boo. I made a really big mistake. So that was sort of the question. People did want to ask about whether FFG had any plans, because it is a Worlds event, to shift the location every year. But
that's a completely different question.
It is a completely different question. It's kind of like when you get half the story in the middle, but like we were talking about before.
I'm willing to bet, though, that it's the completely same answer.
Well, the second part is the same answer, which is I have no say in this. The person you want to talk to is Zach. Zach is head of OP, and he is the gentleman who will be, making any sort of plans or decisions like that. At some point, they may say, hey, this is a thing, and I'll go, that's awesome. I mean, personally, if they were like, hey, Damon, we're going to send you to France, we're going to send you to Poland, we're going to send you to Germany, we're going to send you to China, we're going to send you to Japan, we're going to send you to Korea, I'm going to be like, yeah. but right now, I'm stuck in Minnesota. So.
Rip? Yeah, you never.
Yeah,
adding to that. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's something that your boss doesn't really take seriously. I know from experience when you ask to travel for work. It's really got to come from the community to push that. I don't think Damon can go ask, hey, I'm going to go run a tournament in Italy, and it's probably not going to get signed off on.
Yeah, every time we have a team meeting that the VP attends, or I should say the LCG department meeting, or we have like a product development meeting, and they're like, hey, so we're going to talk about some upcoming changes. I'm almost like, we're spinning the LCG department into its own company, and we're moving to California, right? The first couple times they laughed. I think that it's not funny to them anymore.
Damon, can we expect to see? I mean, I think Netrunner's done an amazing job, and people in the chat have said, of making the world beautiful in like the scope of like the direction they're bringing the game. Like right now we're in India. We've done New Angeles. So is there any? I mean, can we expect to see the game move towards Europe? I would love to see. I would love to see Italy, right? Like I would love to see Italy in the future and Germany, Russia in the future. Like all this would be so amazing.
Well, I mean, you can take a look at the stuff that I've done with Call of Cthulhu. Like, there's a whole box dedicated to Venice. So, I'm all about Europe. I'm all about Italy. There was a box that took place in, France, most of it in Marseille. I've done stuff in England for other games. So I definitely intend to continue with the world building aspect of it. It's going to be a requirement to keep the general world and story rooted, and no pun intended there. But it's going to have to come back to New Angeles. That is home base for the general game. But these forays into other countries, and even to other planetary bodies, a la the lunar cycle. Those are things that I think are really important because they help build the world.
Come
they help
on,
our worlds.
Netrunner Toronto, come on.
So you guys
It's so exotic.
Oh yeah. Honestly, if I had to choose, I love Toronto, and it's a city that I would love to live in. But it's sadly going to probably be Vancouver or Montreal because, Vancouver, Montreal.
I know. You could probably look out your Minnesota window and see the exact same thing I'm looking out here in mine. You don't want to, Toronto's a great city to come to in the summer. I'll tell you that.
I love visiting Toronto. Just absolutely love it. But yeah, generally speaking, when we go to places, the two ways that I always look at it is where have I been, and therefore what do I know, and where would I love to go? So Toronto at some point is certainly going to play a part. Whether it's next year or in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, I couldn't tell you. But I love Toronto, so it'll get at least a shout out at some point.
Oh, that gives me something to look forward to, along with my runner ID that Lucas said is coming sometime soon, right?
Damon,
sure.
Damon, we have to bleed you dry with questions, bro. The fans. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we should move to some more rapid fire questions.
Yeah,
Hollis.
go
for it.
Rapid fire.
I think we've already kept him on the hook for an hour and a half.
My god, best hour and a half of my life. All right, so, this is actually a good one. Someone asked, are there any mechanics that you're interested in exploring in the future that you're willing to share with us now?
Game. Everybody gets a game.
Okay, alrighty. Well, good seeing you. It's a good night. No. Oh man.
See, that's where I should have just dropped the mic and walked away.
Yeah.
Just left it in silence.
You need a criminal card, right? Automatically win the game. Boom.
Oh, that'd be great.
There are all sorts of different things. Like, I think there is a lot of. Actually, talk about the game. I think there is a lot of space for continued development there. I know a lot of the very, very hardcore competitive players are not a fan of it because in their mind, it's like, it's just chance, it's just luck. I'm like, if it's coming down to chance or luck, somebody has already screwed up. If you know that you're playing against somebody who's using game cards, there's things that you can do before those cards ever hit the table that disadvantage them, that will always give you, the leg up on them. If you are including the game and you are finding yourself losing the game on a regular basis, and that is somehow detrimental to your play, then, you've already made a mistake somewhere. There is a high level of play that is required for a game to really be able to work. Same way with DLR. In order to use data leak reversal, you can't just I'll get a bad pub on them, and then I'm just going to click to discard a card, 4 cards every single turn until I win the game. It's like that's against a good player. That's not going to do it. They're going to beat you. There are some real strategies involved in using things like that. So yeah, cards that will on both sides make the game more obviously competitive, help people sort of see a way around it. I know that there's been a bit of hate on advanceable ice. I think that that's a thing that there are multiple avenues that can be explored, and that that will fall into the very thematic side of Weyland, but will allow a slightly different kind of play. Like, I think that there's room there. There's room for tag storm. Right now, tagging tends to be just like, okay, I've tagged you. Now, traffic accident and scorched earth. And I think that there's a lot of tag punishment space that is not about the meat damage. I think there's a lot of space for meat damage that has not been explored. Like, I think every mechanic still has a lot of design space to mine.
What about currents? Do you think we'll continue to see currents being pushed out?
I don't see that changing in the near future. How many? Who knows? But yeah, there is no plan to retire that mechanic. I would say there's no real plans to retire any mechanic.
Hollis, what you got next?
Oh, quick fire question. Rotation. So, rotation happens.
Yes.
Do we get those 3-2s back? Any 3-2s at all? Oh, kill them! Alrighty. Okay. Hold on 1 sec. 1 second. Okay. So, with the number of, with rotation coming, this is gonna be one you can't answer. With rotation coming, you said you had a team that's already testing in the background.
Yes.
Right? They've been testing for maybe, you said 6 months.
Yes. Give or take.
Will current archetypes that are popular still be maintained? I actually got this question from a local player.
That's a good question. And I think that is not one that I can answer. That's up to the community.
Okay.
The question should be, will they still be playable? The answer is yes. Will they still be played? Don't know. Depends on whether people are willing to take a look at cards that are in the environment that have similar effects or fit into a similar bill, but were deemed, not as efficient or too situational, or, if you're willing to take a look at those cards and compare them to the new things that are being released and how many other things that went away in rotation, as well as your pet cards for a particular archetype, you might find that it's still competitive, that there's still stuff there. But it's on the community to find out, the answer to that question.
Do you have a particular card type that you like designing the best, whether it be IDs, agendas, support cards like event or icebreakers, ice?
It changes entirely on, what I think of, what I thought of last. So, right now, at this moment, I would say that my favorite card to design are assets, because I just did a couple of assets that I'm totally in love with, and I cannot wait till they hit the table. But prior to that, I would say identities, because there's a couple of identities that I've designed that I'm totally in love with, and I can't wait till they hit the table. So it really just changes. As people ask, like, so what's your favorite game? And generally the answer is whatever I am in the middle of designing right then is my favorite game, because I'm just so immersed in the world. So it changes.
Two quick fires. Ready?
Sure.
Rapid fire. 1. Well, actually 3. 1. Are you responsible for the ridiculous 4-3 agenda? That was how they worded it. I didn't word it that way.
No comment. I'm sorry, Senator. I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay.
If it was Lucas, I wouldn't throw him under the bus if it was worded that way. And if it was me, why would I even take credit when it's worded that way? So, no comment.
Okay. Multiplayer. Possible in Netrunner?
I don't know. Is it?
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
It's like the circle is complete there. The
Multiplayer
interviewer
coming?
becomes the interviewee.
The 2v2. I'm just
Got hit
saying,
with
like
a question.
a little jousting in Netrunner,
2v2.
or whatever would happen. Like some sort of multiplayer 2-on-1, 2-on-2 group organized play for Netrunner. It's in Game of Thrones. We're hoping.
It is in Game of Thrones. It's
you're
actually
the
my
man.
favorite way of playing Game of Thrones.
Confirmed, guys. Listen what he just said. Translate that. Take it how you confirmed. And then hold on. I got it here. What was the last one? Oh, this was a good one for a quick fire. What ID did you guys think would be competitive that's out now that was not, and you're surprised about it? One on each side.
One on each side. Reyna.
Okay.
Like, I'm just blown away that nobody has taken Reyna to a top table at a premier event. Like, just blown away. Probably one of my favorite runner identities right now. And for the corpse side,
I'm gonna have to start pushing my Reyna Apocalypse a lot heavier.
that would be a fun deck. You might have to send me a list. I might have to build it. For the corpse side, I think that it would have to be because we built it.
Whoa! Really? Wow.
That was a
well,
pure
I
record
should say,
scratch, right? Like
it's
what?
I really should say there's two different things. Because we built it, because the cards, the infamous trio of advanceable ice that nobody plays because they are terrible, didn't start off terrible. They started off ridiculous, and it was another case where, well, we'll do this because it's safer.
Ice Wall, Shadow, and Hadrian's. Are those the three you're referring? Okay.
No.
Oh, that means before they are what they are. Maybe. All right, shut up. Oh.
Tyrant, Woodcutter, Salvage.
Oh, those.
When we designed those, they were beasts, just absolute beasts, and they needed to be taken down a bit. And Lucas was like, "Well, we'll just change it so they can only be advanced after they're rezzed." But no other changes were made to the card or the cards, so they kind of fell into a place where it's like, yeah, if you can get advancement tokens on these ice, they are brutal. Getting advancement tokens onto that ice is a problem. Like, you have to be dedicated to make that happen. Because we built it was one that, through testing was just amazing. But in the end, when things finally came out, it was just like, oh, yeah, I don't think this is ever really going to be a thing. The one that actually got released, the way that it was, the way that we had envisioned it and has not seen play is Stronger Together. Like, I'm just constantly surprised about how many people are singing the praises of ETF and haven't really done the math on Stronger Together yet.
Good, all good points there.
I'm scared to know. Like, I'm actually at this point, I'm kind of like thinking about like Salvage, because I mean, Salvage was a 2. It's pretty obvious, 2 strength. It's pretty obviously yoggable. So I'm wondering now, at any point in time, did Salvage have more strength? I mean, because it's pretty clear that with those, I mean, granted, at this stage, I don't think Tyrant, Salvage, and Woodcutter are great at all, but I think it's pretty obvious the fact that they have multiple subs. They add subs, not strength. If they were advanceable and you just stacked and stacked and stacked that could be ridiculous. Just crazy ridiculous.
Yep.
Wow.
Maybe we need to start seeing those the Byroid 2.0s roll out more.
Where my 5.0 Byroids, Damon? I was promised 5.0 Byroids. We thought by now.
I don't think we promised 5.0s. I think we promised 4.0s.
We thought by now we would see Eli 6.2 that cost 38 to res but had 26 ETR subroutines. And he was like a teenager, but like he was like a punk. He was like in his room like doing
super emo.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the haircut's like all covering the eye.
Yep.
I don't know where that went.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't really have. I think the chat might be questioned out. Everything else I have is kind of, I don't know if we can really ask it. How do you feel about Stronger Together, Damon? Is it one of your favorites? I think we lost Jameson.
I actually really like Stronger Together. I would not say it is one of my favorites, but I feel about it the same way I feel about Engineering the Future, which is it's a fun thing to play. Like I said, right now for Haas, my go-to is Cybernetics Division. I just love reducing the runner's options down.
There he is. You say you like reducing the runner's options down?
Yeah. No, I mean, you start off with the equivalent of 1 brain damage, and it just gets worse.
I'm trying to think. Oh, no. Okay, this makes sense. So you actually, you just beat him down. Reduce your hand size by 1, reduce it by 1 again, take a brain here, a tiny brain.
Yep.
I don't know how you survive with a 2-card hand size with 300 snails.
2. Oh, 2's adorable. They should be so lucky to have 2. This, by the way, is the one deck that I have to constantly think about how frequently I sit down at home to play it, because I actually want my fiance to marry me and not leave me.
So you actually dislike playing against it? It's a struggle, all the brain you take?
I like playing it. She doesn't necessarily love playing against it, so I have to space it out.
Sunny versus Cybernetics. I get it. I can see how that could be problematic. I think our chat is pretty questioned out. Pretty much it's basically questions piggybacking off of Damon's statements. Do you think we'll ever see more reliable options for brain damage? But I think that's you'll have to wait and see.
I would say yes. That's actually one that I'm willing to say yes. You will see more reliable ways to land brain damage, but brain damage being, by far and away the most game altering.
Yes.
It will always be in small amounts. Okay. Like you don't expect a cybernetics EMP. Don't expect a thing that you can just pay a couple of credits and zap the runner's brain on your turn as the core.
It's got to be like a push your luck mechanic, right? And I mean the card push your luck. It's like a runner psi game, right?
Yeah. No whammy, no whammy, no whammy. Stop.
Damon, describe the core of Netrunner in 3 sentences or less. Go. I'm waiting. Let's go.
The core of Netrunner.
Core of Netrunner, 3 sentences or less.
Avoid bad publicity. Don't run your last click. And 3 sentences. Install, advance, advance.
There you go. 3. The 3 cores. Install, advance, advance. I'm doing it backwards. Don't run last click. Avoid bad publicity. Don't avoid this bad publicity, though.
Metaphorically.
No.
Yeah. In the game, don't. Yeah. Jeez. Damon, we really appreciate you coming out here and coming on the podcast and talking with a lot of people that are watching and a lot of the fans. I did want to say and take a second to say, gone to Worlds twice and Nationals, and every time I've had the luxury of meeting you, you're an incredibly pleasant person. You're always so nice. I know that there's a ton of people that try to grab your attention and talk to you when you're at this events, and you're so busy, but you always find time to talk to everybody because they're all fans and they all want to pick your brain. So I really wanted to say, well, yeah, we can tell. You had a problem with your car and you still made it on the podcast. So, we really appreciate you coming on, and we ourselves are fans, and everybody in the chat are very much fans. We're really excited to see what you're really going to do with the game. We expect to be shaken up. We expect some heartbreak. We think some main characters are going to die. I can speak for a few people when I do say that I really hope we see more faces of corporations. I really like that we have a Victoria Jenkins. I would love to see Jack Weyland. If he's alive, if he's still alive from his hostile takeover, I don't know. I think that a lot of those elements and those story elements are what really make the game. Those thematics and really what you excel well at is what breathes a lot of life into the game and makes it so interesting. Even if it's just a single ID that just sits on my board and I play it one time, knowing I have a face to connect to NBN and Weyland really adds to the game. So
maybe it'll be in that the world of Netrunner or the world of Android book there, Hollis.
It might be.
Get your pre-orders in.
Might be.
I would definitely. I put it this way. I did a pre-order. I'm paying full price for this thing because I want all the sweet swag. I've seen the book. It's awesome. The artwork is phenomenal. The writing in it is cool. It's I don't know. It sounds so weird. I mean, it's like almost like me like congratulating myself because some of the stuff in there is like things that are, expansions and creations and stuff that are based on things that I have created.
Yeah.
But
is it like the LLDS?
A little bit. And hey, there is another LLDS card coming.
What?
I haven't created it yet, but at some point,
it's
going
coming.
to happen. One day. I've just decided now. You heard it here first on Bad Publicity.
I love the exclusives.
You're welcome. I have found things in the book that have inspired me to go to different places and do different things, and I think that if you're a fan of the game, you're a fan of the universe, it is an amazing thing to own. And I know it sounds like I'm really just plugging for my company, but like I said, I'm paying full price for it because I want it that much.
Wow.
Damon, are you able to? I'm going to ask you, but I kind of probably know what your answer is. Can you hint or let us know when we're going to see some of these runners that we're seeing in the flavor text pop up, like Princess Space Kitten and Guru? Are they coming eventually? Or are they going to be a mystery?
Some of them have no specific intentions as of now to create as identities. Others will eventually happen. It's just a matter of the right place, right time. Particularly in the case of our cycles that are based on geographic locations, because these runners have real bodies. So they will pop up in places as would be appropriate to their environs. So maybe you'll see a PSK at some point if we ever go to wherever she happens to live. No spoilers. As far as all of the others, what we've got, Reeve and Guru and Smoke and some of them may show up someday. Some of them might not. It might not be me who does it. It might be whoever ends up taking the game over after.
Damon, don't leave us.
A young Hollis.
I have no intention of going anywhere anytime soon. How's that?
Okay. We can't lose Lucas and Damon. I mean, I don't even know. I have the very last question. I'm sorry if you have additional questions. I have the last question, I think. Damon, from Joshua Gregg, what are you most excited about for the future of Netrunner?
Rotation.
Bam! We're in there, guys. We did it. We made it. Damon, you spent 2 hours here with us, man. Are you serious?
Yeah, pretty close.
You're great guys.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who stuck with us all the way from the beginning to the end, and who supports our show and that watched it. Damon, we really look forward to what you have up your sleeves for us going forward, and we look forward to talking with you again later on as we come closer to revealing some of your creations as they come to fruition.
Awesome. Anytime.
Yeah, man. Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks again. I hope we get the chance to have you on the show again. Maybe you can talk about more spoilers that you can't talk about though.
I'm sure we can work something out.
Yeah.
It all depends how many zeros are on the checks, right?
I'm just saying. I just checked it. I didn't see any.
You give me enough notice, and I don't know. Maybe I can talk to some of the powers that be and get you guys an exclusive or something.
Oh,
We're
that'd
in.
be amazing.
Inside man, Damon Stone. He's the actual art with the red beard. I don't know. Very cool.
All right, guys, we're gonna sign off there. Thanks again. Really appreciate everything.
All right. Thank you.